You Booked It, episode 225. What's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining me today on You Booked It, the #1 podcast where you learn how to create a successful entertainment career. Have you joined the You Booked It community yet? It is your go-to entertainment career resource. Inside, you'll have direct access to Broadway performers, Emmy nominees, and people just like yourself navigating this industry. Learn from those walking the walk. Build industry relationships, access unlimited masterclasses, and learn how to book the job more consistently. Join free today. Tap the link in the show notes or go to youbookeditpodcast.com/invite to get inside. And now, let's meet today's guest. All right, let's get started with today's interview. I'm excited to introduce my guest today. I've got Caroline Liviakis. Are you ready to do this, Caroline?
Yes, I am.
Beautiful. Caroline began her career as the founder and executive artistic director of the Caroline Liviakis Dance Company. She has since switched her career to both a director and choreographer for film. Her debut feature-length film, Lessons in Love, will begin shooting next year. Caroline, that is an ultra tight synopsis of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in those gaps, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Hi, thanks, Dane. So I began my career as a choreographer of live performance. So everything that I've ever done in my career has been dance-based. I'm a choreographer. I started the traditional path of bringing productions to life and also social dance experiences to life for audiences in the flesh. And so I started my own dance company in San Francisco, California, here in the US. And I grew that company for a few years, and I was really dedicated toward that live dancing path. But as I was creating these new works, I started to integrate more and more of digital digital components into my live works. And from then kind of sprouted this interest in creating and showcasing dance on film. And so I kind of just became so immersed in that. And I started to see sort of the writing on the wall in some ways of right now is just not a ideal time for live, for anything live in the entertainment industry. And with a few different laws that were passed here in California, and also with COVID, it was just not seeming like the right time to sort of be crusading for this dance company. And my heart was really somewhere else. So I ended up, I closed the dance company. Eventually one day we'll reopen it, but that will be in the future. And I have started off on this career of directing and choreographing for film. So I've directed and choreographed 3 short films and am off for, actually, it's going to be later this year where we're going to be shooting my debut feature film, which is a dance musical titled Lessons in Love.
Yeah, very cool. I am really looking forward to exploring this and digging in a bit. But let's get into this first section here. And Caroline, look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What
Yes.
is your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
My quote comes from, it's one of the most influential people in my life, Robert Greene, and it's from his book, 48 Laws of Power. And it's one of the later laws in his book, but it's very simple. It's despise the free lunch. And that quote, it's not as, I guess like feel good or with a lot of, starry language, but that quote, and just kind of anything that he has said in general, but that quote has really resonated with me in this latter stage of my career as a director of what was a nonprofit dance company. And I think a lot of artists in general, there's this very hungry and kind of starvation sort of mentality that I found myself getting into, and I found a lot of artists. getting into, and because we don't have we're in such a brutally competitive industry,
Mm.
and at the same time there's no money for anything that we have, and so we have to work 8 zillion different jobs to sort of make it work, and then on top of it we're trying to raise money and gain attention for what we actually want to be doing, our art projects. So there's this kind of beggar's sort of mentality that sort of, I think, naturally ends up developing from that. And that quote sort of epitomizes this mentality that I sort of began to adopt, or that I began to sort of realize was really important and crucial for not only success, but also for survival, quite frankly, in the industry, where rather than thinking about, okay, what can someone else do for me? And how is somebody else going to make my way? It's more thinking about, what do I have to bring to the table? And what am I offering that makes somebody want to work with me? And rather than kind of having this mentality of expectation and I deserve this, it's more of building myself up in terms of my skills, my connections, in terms of my creative abilities, my vision, and then showcasing to other people what I have to offer and how what I offer fits into what they need.
Yeah, I really like that quote and that explanation. It's knowing your worth, right? And taking power of that. And I think really shifting your mindset from this kind of a scarcity thinking that, hey, because the reality is, look, you said, there's a lot of competition
Yes.
in this industry. It doesn't really matter which part of it you're in, but specifically with dancing, my goodness, there is so much competition in the dance specific world. And you have to switch something in your mind, right, from a scarcity thinking to an abundance thinking that, hey, know your worth, do your thing, and say the work is there. There's opportunity everywhere. And I think having that mental shift, like you've talked about, is absolutely integral to creating a successful career. So you can really leverage, like you said, that network, those relationships that you have as well as your talents, and melding them all together.
Right, right. And thinking, I think, outside of yourself
Mm.
is because, and this is something that I actually, quite frankly, have recently I've been kind of thinking a lot about this, but I think in this culture that we have now, especially in the entertainment industry, but with the rise of social media, it really promotes, so much of your time goes into thinking and being completely warped into your own world and your own, and we all operate out of our own world and our own mindset, that obviously, but every single day you're having to post on social media, look at me, remember me, here, this is what I'm doing, this is my stuff. And it's constantly like this idea of, you're just kind of constantly poking people, like, remember me.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a
And
forced narcissism almost.
yeah, and if we did this stuff in real life, you would be kicked out of the social group immediately. It'd be obnoxious. But because of this online universe that we're having to weave our way through, we have to adopt these really strange behaviors, and that's the only way that you kind of can survive on these platforms. And right now in many ways in the entertainment industry, because they're becoming so linked at this point. So it creates that is feeding into and creating this kind of very, just everything becomes about you, and every second of your day is revolved around thinking about me and presenting myself and pushing myself out there, where if you step back for 5 seconds and think about other people and what they're looking for, what they need, what are their interests, especially when you're networking, if you start thinking more about other people and versus immediately going into just pushing yourself forward,
Mm-hmm.
totally changes your interactions with people, and it changes in many ways your sales pitch. Because I have many, for instance, I know we're getting into a networking conversation here, but like I'll put out auditions for all these different things, and I'll get these cover letters from these dancers or these actors, and they're immediately a lot of them, I mean, I'd say maybe 70% of them that I get are, dear Caroline, whatever, I want to be part of this project, this film, I want to dance for your company. And they always started off with, I know what a great opportunity this is for me. I've always wanted to be in a film. I know it's going to be great for my career. I'm going to do this. And they're trying to tell me that they want this job that I'm offering, but they're telling me about how great of an opportunity it is for them. And I cannot even begin to tell you how much of this I get. And coming from a sort of sales perspective, if they're coming into this trying to convince me to hire them because of how great it will be for them. And it's like, I know it will be. That's why I'm offering the job. Like, I
Yeah,
know
right.
it's going to be great for you, but how is it great for me, to hire? And so, but
Yeah,
if
what
you're
do you bring to the
entering,
table that I can
right.
leverage?
And also just thinking about, well, what might I be looking for, and so seeing that from, I get to be on that side of things. But when I'm trying to network myself, when I'm trying to network with a producer, or trying to pitch a film or anything like that, now kind of having that perspective, rather than coming in and being like, this is my film, blah blah blah, it's researching, what are these people actually, what do they want, who are they, and then showing, okay, well, this is how I fit within that. And it totally changes your perspective on things.
Yeah, 100%. Very valuable. And I think for everyone, that is a section to rewind, re-listen, and take in for sure. So good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's dig into this next section here. And Caroline, of course, you are an entertainer. I'm an entertainer, and I think that you'd agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, and personally emotional industries in existence.
Yes.
And as well as I, that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, there is an outrageous amount of fun, excitement, and fulfillment doing what we do, there are going to be our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures that we are going to experience, and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key obstacle, challenge, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
Okay, so when you presented these questions, I was trying to think through, because there are just so many.
Yeah,
I'm
that
just
is the
like,
thing.
okay, so which type? How bad do we go down the rabbit hole on this one? Um, okay, I'm gonna give you what legitimately has been one of my worst ones. I'm gonna hide some of the details, because some of it was just kind of, I guess, I'm not gonna go into everything, but I will give the gist of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So the second short film that I ever directed, In Easy Out Breezy, it was my transition period from when I had my dance company into me just going solo and going into the film world. So I still was working with a lot of the same people that I had worked with in my dance company years, but it was under, this different structure. The people that I had worked with, a lot of them were very close friends of mine, or they were, they were just people that I had become friends with or were friends with. A lot of times I would hire my family to be dance, because I have two sisters who are dancers. And so everything was very tight knit. And so I would do photo releases and stuff, but I kept things not super intensive on the legal contract end of things, and which is how I wanted it, because we were all just, we're here all together, we're making it work, we set our payment agreement, and you do the work, I pay you, done.
Yep.
And that was fine, except when it wasn't. And so I had a person that I had been collaborating with. We were very, very, very good friends, up through the early days of my dance company. And he became the cinematographer of my film. And we set our payment agreement and everything like that. And I told him, because we had never signed contracts before. It was just, you do your work, I get the footage, you get the money, we're done. But this one I said, it's a film. I'm spending a lot of money on this thing. Like I was literally spending a year's worth of money that I had made teaching Pilates and dance. I had saved all of this up and it was a year's worth to pay for this film. So it's not like a laughing matter.
Right.
And I said, we need to sign contracts just so I was like, I trust you. You're my greatest friend, but just, and he said, yes, totally. We'll sign it. I'm giving you the footage, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into the details of why this happened, but okay. So we didn't end up signing the contracts because I just got too busy to actually draft them. And so I was going to have them ready after the shoot. Something happened during the shoot where he got miffed at me over that. And after the shoot happened, he did not give my footage to me. So he held my footage hostage and he would not release it to me and not sign the contract. So I finally got a hold of the footage, but he still would not sign the contract. And what I found out the really hard way was you don't own your own footage until someone has signed over that it's work for hire. So I own all of the stuff that's inside of the footage, but I don't own the actual footage itself unless I have this person's signature. Right. So that was a year's worth of my life right there of money spent for something I couldn't use. So it was just a very horrible situation. I had to go through a legal battle over it. And just to get my film back in my hands, finally, I was able to get the footage and, make the film, but it ended up taking 6 months of my life of this back and forth just because I hadn't made someone sign a contract before the shooting began. And I trusted that, okay, we're friends. It's all going to be good. So that's a very real one. Not like I didn't wear the right color to an audition, right colored leotard to an audition or something. That's a real one, but it's one that whenever, because I teach at different colleges, and whenever I'm giving a lecture on different lessons for the industry, I always really stress this because it ends up biting a lot of people. This is not just my experience. Many people where it doesn't matter if it's your mom working on your, in your dance company on your set, always have people sign contracts because it doesn't matter. Things happen and people's emotions get involved, and that's going to affect your work and your money that you've put at stake. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly valuable story. Thank you for sharing that. And we could all learn a lot from that. I think, yes, contracts are so important. And really, whenever it comes to money, when it comes to IP or intellectual property, you need to protect yourself. And you need to, if you're the artist getting handed a contract, you need to make sure you read your contract, actually read it.
Yes.
Even if it's this, and I say this to people all the time, that even if it's from an agency or some booking that you work for regularly, and it's essentially the same contract, copy pasted, new date, new gig information, new pay information, right? Mm-hmm. Same contract, fine. Read it, because what that does is it's instilling the habit of reading your contracts, so that when one does come up that has different information in it, that you know what you're looking at, that you're used to going through that motion. And it's habitual to read your contracts before you sign them. And it's so important. You have to try to separate yourself. I mean, sometimes it's easier said than done. Like if you're working with friends or family, it's just business. It has nothing to do with emotionally with you. It's that this just needs to be done just because it needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Just like you have to wear your seatbelt, we just got to do this. Okay. And that's it. There doesn't go anywhere beyond that, but you need to have things in writing. Things need to be contracted, and it's so important. Like you experienced, it can save you a lot of money, a lot of frustration in the future.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. What's the other thing about contracts? Oh, I personally, I mean, not everyone is like this, but when it comes to performing on a contract, say there's a lot of people on a gig, and maybe a handful of different agencies or castings contributed to the whatever the event may be for the talent. Well, I think it's always helpful to chat with people and be open about, okay, well, what are you getting paid to be here? If you're on the same gig and you guys are literally doing the same thing, I think those are good conversations to have, because it's very taboo, especially in America or, most first world countries, to not talk about money. And I think in our industry, It's really important to talk about money. And that if you get on a gig and you realize someone's getting paid, double what you're being paid or 50% more than what you're getting paid, that's good information to know. It's nothing to get upset about. It's to go, oh, that's okay. All right, well, who booked you? Like, how did you get that? So then you need to know that those kinds of things exist and that maybe there's some negotiation room, or maybe you need to get connected with various different agencies or people, but you don't know these things unless you have these conversations. That's why I think it's so important to talk and be open about what your arrangements are with your peers.
Right. Yes, definitely. Well, and also this is coming from a creator's perspective, but a piece of advice that I did get from one of my early mentors was, and we're talking very early stages of starting anything artistically, but she emphasized, it doesn't matter if it's a little tiny appearance or if it's this or that, always pay your dancers, and always, because sometimes like you're just with your friends and you're just going to go, oh, let's just do this gig, it's just us having fun, but the fact of having a payment immediately makes it a professional relationship. And the contract makes it better, but at least the money will help put a boundary on that, of, even though it's no matter who you're with, if it's your friends, if it's your family, if it's a random, person you found at an audition, whatever, it immediately creates a professional relationship with certain expectations, and it forces you to outline what those expectations are. So that was also another thing in that sort of contract realm or payment realm that has worked well for me, and I'm glad that I've stuck to.
Yeah, I think that is so important, to create actual, real professional relationships, and money does. It doesn't have to be great gobs of money, but it does have to be. Having that transaction is huge. I think it sets expectation, and also, I don't know about you, the way I personally feel about things, I don't like owing people favors. I like to be clean and cut and dry. That's why money exists, right? Because we've standardized compensation, right? That's the purpose of it, or standardized value. And I like being very even with people all the time. And I like favors to come from a place that help everyone in a way. It's leveraging a network. It's, I'm helping you out because I know that you're great for this role, this job, this gig, whatever it might be. And I'm referring you because we have a great relationship, and then that becomes reciprocated, that I'm not getting gigs, or I'm not expecting to get gigs because of a favor that's based on some kind of ambiguous value thing. So I think that also helps keep things cleaner throughout your career and keep your relationships and your networks much cleaner.
Yes, I could not agree more. And then you enter into those things thinking, okay, well, this person's gonna, if you do something, or if they do something or whatever, then you're constantly keeping this tally of like, okay, well, when are they going to sort of, I guess, maybe pay me back or whatever, not money wise, but just like reciprocating. And then it doesn't happen, and it creates this resentment or whatever. Or if it does, was it equal to or more? Or I think it's just so much easier. Just, okay, you do this amount, you get paid this, done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, like I said, standardizes value. That's why money is so important. Yeah. Otherwise, you're like, now there's this subjective balancing scale where each person inevitably thinks their thing was more valuable.
Exactly.
So you're setting yourself up for not good things down the road.
Yep.
Beautiful. Love that section. So good. Did you know building industry relationships are the most important assets you need to create a long-lasting entertainment career? And don't take my word for it. Guest after guest here on the podcast have attributed some of their biggest career moments to their relationships. That is why you need to get yourself inside the You Booked It community. You'll learn what you need to do to get noticed and make sure your headshot stays in the callback pile so you can book the gig more consistently and create a successful career. Tap the link in the show notes or go to youbookeditpodcast.com/invite to get inside free today. And let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I'm going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yeah, this is what I need to be doing in the industry. Tell us about that.
When I was in college, I was a philosophy major, and I was also a dance major, but just not at all ingrained in what I was doing dance-wise. That was just so that I could move my body through the day, but I was career-wise completely engrossed in philosophy. And my goal was to become a philosophy professor or a lawyer. And so I was going through those paths, and that was my whole focus. And so, choreographing or entertainment, all of that was to the way back of my mind. So I started, however, choreographing I choreographed a piece my junior year that got into the student dance concert, which was kind of a somewhat, I guess, prestigious thing within our university, because it was, this whole adjudication process and everything. So I had a little thing going, but I still wasn't focused on dance. It was still just kind of a thing that I did for fun rather than something serious. And as I kept, the year then went into, senior year, and I'm, preparing to go to law school. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm just going, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't enjoy this at all. I don't know what I'm doing. And my whole world sort of, I guess, not crashed around me. That's so dramatic, but it was kind of a moment of, wow, I don't know what I'm even doing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, okay, well, what am I doing that is actual, that I will do, that's not prompted by anybody? Because in order for me to write, as much as I loved philosophy, if I wouldn't write a paper on my own, I wouldn't write an article on my own, I needed an assignment to get me motivated to do it.
Yep.
Whereas with dance, for these different concerts, I would be in the dance studio until 2 a.m. almost, on the weekends on my own, just choreographing. And I would be up very late at night writing notes after pages of notes for my dancers. And all of this was completely unprompted by anybody. It was just me doing it because I really, really wanted to. And I kind of had this somewhat epiphany of, well, this is where my effort is going. This is what I should be doing. And I truly enjoyed it. I just never thought of it as a career option. I never thought that I was ever going to do anything in dance, because I'm not a dancer myself, and I'm not good at dancing. And so there's kind of this idea in the dance industry that if you're not a dancer, or if you're not good at dancing very specific styles, that you kind of don't belong. And so I've kind of always felt like I've just been this sort of amateur, my whole life, even though I have a lot to say as a choreographer and a lot as a teacher, but it doesn't fit into this one very specific, but very highlighted, area within dance. And so that idea of it being a career was just so off my radar. But once I started to realize, like, this is where your effort is actually going, I went and I talked to, one of my teachers, and she said, yeah, you can be a choreographer as a profession. That is possible.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, that was just a moment of, oh, it is. I didn't realize that. And so I guess it was not as specific, but I just remember this one evening of sitting there and thinking about what do I actually do? and what do I like doing? Where do I spend my time when nobody's telling me what to do? And that was the light bulb that sort of set it off of what my, I guess, destiny was in this
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah, I really like that story and the idea, like you said, sitting with myself and thinking, what am I doing unprompted? Where's my
Mm-hmm.
energy going? Because that's just what I'm drawn to. And I think there's a lot to be drawn from that and learn from that. And I think we can expand on that as well. And I think there's a lot of people that simply don't take the time to ask themselves those kinds of questions or sit with themselves for a second and go,
Mm-hmm.
because especially if you are a dancer, if you are a singer, or if you've been doing theater you usually have started, most people, I was not one of them, but you start very, very early in life as a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you've always done and you're always doing. So it just kind of, you're doing this as a natural progression just because it seems to make sense, but is it really in alignment with you? That's another question that I think a lot of people oftentimes don't take the time to think about. And I think that
Right.
also expands into a professional career when people go, okay, well, I want to do this professionally. All right. So what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And to really take the time to think about, well, what do you want out of your career for real? Do you want to be in New York? Do you want to be in LA? Is living in New York something that even vibes with you? Or is being
Right.
in a place like New York going to absolutely like be out of alignment? Same thing with LA or Vegas or wherever it might be in the world that you want to work. Very few people take the time to really sit with themselves and go, okay, what is it I really want out of my career? Because different venues, different markets offer different types of opportunities. And you have to, I believe the goal is to try to find the markets that offer the opportunities that are in alignment with what it is that is ultimately your end goal. So you can set yourself up for success before you even get there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think
Yeah.
there's this focus so much on when people, talk about like picking your career, they're like, what's your passion? Follow your passion. And I don't know, definitely a pessimist, so I guess I'm going to be the Grinch on this one, but I always that the idea of like your passion or whatever always just kind of annoyed me because everybody has certain things that they like doing under certain circumstances. But when you're doing something professionally, it's putting on, you have the fun elements that ignite passions, but then you have that accompanied with the realities of
Mm,
what it's like to make it actually work as a profession. And so you have all of the stress load and all of the challenges that come with that. And, so you might really, really enjoy being in jazz class and taking jazz, but what does it actually mean to be a professional jazz dancer? Well, it means you have to be auditioning all the time and you're having people constantly judge you. It means you have to oftentimes work other jobs. You don't have health care, all these other things that people don't really think about. So, like, whenever I'm talking to other people about their go, how do I figure out what my where my place is and all this kind of stuff. I always just say it's you follow your effort will reveal where your true career passion is. It's follow your effort, not your passion. Because I think that's so much more of a sustainable mentality than just passion is just very like it's floaty and happiness. And it's this kind of, but there's just so much that will go against and will kind of taint and ruin that original like starry-eyed happiness. And it's what kind of poisons are you willing to deal with in life? And each career is going to have that really fun, passion-filled, vibrance, but it's also going to have its healthy dose of its own version of poison. And can you deal with that? um,
yeah.
and your effort will reveal what you're willing to go to put yourself through and what you're willing to tolerate.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with that. I think it is about asking those hard questions. Are you willing? Like you said, what does it mean to be a professional jazz dancer, or professional anything, right? In the arts, in different markets, for instance, if you look at the average, say, musical theater person in New York, look, the fact is, or not the fact, a high probability is that you're going to have multiple jobs to support yourself while you are pursuing what you actually want to do, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes for a long time. And then the question also comes is, okay, well then so say you're in New York, what's your goal? Do you want to work in New York? Do you want to be on Broadway? Do you want to be on off-Broadway? Do you want to be in film? Like there's so much work, say, in that market, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you book something, you book a tour. Okay, well, do you take it or do you not take it? Because now you showed up. Why did you go to New York? Did you go to New York because there's an abundance of opportunity, or did you go there because you wanted to work specifically in New York? And trying to get clear on that, I think is as much as possible. Obviously, this is a moving target always throughout a career. So then when opportunities do present themselves, you can come from a place that's less emotional and be like, no, this is what I'm working towards. And I'm going to turn this opportunity down, or no, I want to take it. Like, for instance, when I went to New York at first, my original idea was, I want to be on Broadway. I want to be on Broadway. I went to a school that was the trajectory, right?
Yeah.
What I ultimately found out, so I got this first contract and I needed it, and my agent's like, we're going to turn it down. I said, nope, I need the money. So I was like, okay, good, we got to do it. So I did that. But what I found out in that first contract is that I didn't necessarily want Broadway. All I really wanted to do is I just wanted to work professionally as an entertainer and let that experience take me, around the world and travel and meet people. Like that's where I was like, that's what I want. I'm like, great. So now I can feed that, right? But like you said, it's your energy. Follow your energy and your effort.
Yeah. And as you just said, like every project that you do, it will reveal a little bit more of that extra puzzle piece that puts together what you're actually, and also it also changes over time. So you might start in your early 20s, like, woo, I want to travel the world. And so being on a cruise ship might sound really awesome
Great.
at 22, whereas, 32 might not be so great.
Yeah, I've got a 5-year-old girl. I'm not going traveling around the world anymore. You know what I mean? Like, priorities change, and that's cool, and that's totally fine. But I love that. And I want to piggyback real quick, and I want to talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it, what was going on in your life, and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment.
Okay, so I'll talk about the very glitzy moment, I guess, for me. It was the moment when I just knew, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm meant to do. It was actually in my first, for my first film, it was the world premiere at the New Filmmakers Los Angeles Film Festival in LA, obviously in LA. I had this, my first film I ever did called Better Than You Do and You Don't Be Mad. It was premiering in this film festival. And this film was made by absolute, nothing. It was $900 for the film. It was my family and my friends. We pulled this thing together. We shot it in one day. It was just we're trying to make a film out of basically nothing. But we got in this, it's a pretty good film festival, and I'm there next to the other films that had been directed there. Were directed by people that shoot commercials for Barbie. They've done all, 3 feature films. They've done all of these people were very in the industry already, really, really making it.
Right.
And, they had budgets of, $50,000 or whatever for these tiny 4-minute films. And then here I am there with my $900 film with my mom in there. And so I remember being on stage for the Q&A, and we were going to, we had all the directors up on stage, and the moderator was asking all of us, and we just went down the line answering. And not to toot my own horn, but I kind of am. it was a moment of realizing, even though I was so beyond the lowest level person there in terms of my experience level, in terms of the budgets I had to work with, in terms of anything. I mean, I was at the way bottom of that, of the totem pole. But I was you can see in an audience when they're really gravitating toward you. And when I would talk, when we were doing the Q&A, I could see everybody's eyes light up when I was talking, and how the audience was really responding to everything that I was saying. And I saw that that was not there with the other directors, and when they were describing their works. And even though my film, I mean, it was fine. It was fine for a first film. It's not going to, blow any doors down or anything. It's not that great. But what I understood there is that I had tapped into how to communicate a vision to people that expanded beyond just that 4-minute film that I had brought to the festival. And it was a vision that people were excited by and that they wanted to see more of. And it was just very palpable. And so, and that just kind of continued throughout the festival, but I sort of felt like I had really tapped into, okay, I know what I'm creating that spans way beyond this moment. And I know that once I'm able to really showcase exactly what this vision is, that there are going to be people on board. And so I remember like the evening I called my boyfriend at the time and I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I was so beyond excited, but I just felt like I had finally found my place.
Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? You've talked about it a little bit, but what are you looking forward to, and how do you see this industry moving forward the next couple of years?
So the most, I guess, upcoming project that I'm working on is my debut feature, or my feature film length debut as director and choreographer and writer. It's titled Lessons in Love. I'll give just a little info about it, but I can't give too much.
Fair.
But it's what I call a dance musical. So I'm kind of working on, I guess, creating a new genre, but it's a musical, but where dance is very, very integral and woven within the narrative of the story. It actually helps communicate the narrative of the story. It's not just like the traditional musical format where you have the talking and then you just cut to the song accompanied with the dance. The dance is a lot more integrated and woven throughout. So it's kind of a pop art style dance musical. And it features this couple as they meet each other and they get married and then they get divorced, and it's following them through this lovely journey of the high up into this marriage and then the down and where they start to hate each other. And so it's this kind of very comical, very playful, over the top sort of showcase of the course of their relationship. But the biggest thing that I'm trying to show within this film, and that I'm just kind of working on in general with every project that I work on, or especially the features, are a rebirth, or this is kind of my mission, I guess, is the sort of rebirth or the reimagination of what the movie musical looks like. And because the musical, and for people like us, we are musical theater people. So we, anybody in our circles are like, yes, musicals, we love them. It's part of our blood. But there's a lot of people that don't feel that way. And it's kind of, I just find it so interesting the more that I've sort of gotten into the film universe, because I've just been so dance, my whole life. And then sort of going into this new realm, just the amount of people that just hate musicals is very staggering to me. And I really want to change that. But also I think that the musical over the past 40 years has gone through a really, really sharp decline in terms of interest and in terms of how many are actually being produced. It's just we're not even in the same, realm of what it used to be. And I really, really do think, in terms of connecting this to where we think the industry is moving forward, I definitely think that is in the horizon. I'm not going to say the next 2 years or whatever, but I think that it's definitely within the next, I'd say 5 to 10 years. I definitely think that the musical is going to become more and more popular. Um, First of all, I think just historically speaking, so this is, and these are all my opinions, but I personally think that TikTok is pretty much a modernized version of vaudeville. Um,
Yeah.
and it might sound kind of strange at first, but it's like, but vaudeville was based off of really, short acts that were showcasing a variety of different people, and people would become they wouldn't be necessarily, sometimes there were exceptions, but they would become infamous, not classically famous. And it was about short bursts of fame where you're known for a very specific thing that you do. I have the big, dress, and I, hide different things under my dress, or I'm the person that has fire, and there's very specific kind of things that you're known for. And I think, and it has this like kind of chaotic energy about it, which I think TikTok just completely epitomizes in the modern day. And
Yeah.
what ended, and it's also, well, if everyone is glued to TikTok, which quite frankly I don't understand why, but it's like I feel like there's a generational thing there. But what it's kind of revealing, I think, in terms of a younger generation, is there's this interest in having things that are much more lighthearted, silly, fun, dance and music based. And it's right now revealing itself in this very short form, kind of chaotic, silly format. But I don't necessarily think that energy is going to stop there. Just as, there was the whole boom of the musical era, the really heightened musical era that came right after vaudeville. I don't necessarily see why that wouldn't happen now. That this energy and this interest in dance that has really been showcased on something like TikTok, I don't see how that is not going to translate into some slightly more serious formats like TV and film in the next 5 years or so. Um,
Yeah.
and we've started to see this on certain shows. Like there was Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, for TV, and there's so many others that I'm just blanking on right now. But there are many other TV shows that have really been kind of working on this idea of creating music, of adding a musical into a more narrative context. And I think that there's progress being made there. There's a question of to whether or not it's, the right characters and all that kind of stuff to actually use as a vehicle for this format. Um, but I just think that the musical has a future, first of all, in terms of being kind of rebirthed again, but it needs to be in a slightly reimagined format to fit a more modern context. And one of the outlets or one of the movies that I particularly find to be the most interesting, in that, which would not be classically considered a musical at all, but it's actually Edgar Wright. He's, for those who don't know, director. His two films, but Scott Pilgrim versus the World and Baby Driver. Those films are very clearly not musicals in the traditional sense. There's no dancing, or very little to no dancing, and there's no singing in them. But I think I could write a paper on this, an argument that those are musicals. They're just reimagined in a very, very different way. They're entirely music driven, but they use found music material. But every single cut in the film, every single line has a very musical presentation to it. And it's somebody thinking of how are we integrating music and any sort of movement, but in a very sort of new, highly stylized context. And so I think that there some films like that, and somebody can even take that format and you're adding more dance and actual singing to it, and we can kind of push that. we're combining that style with a traditional musical. And I think that something like that is going to be sort of where the future of musicals lie. And that's what I'm trying to create.
Very cool. Very cool. I love all of that insight. Fantastic. Let's see what happens. So
Yeah, we'll see. But with film, this is, I guess, there's so much that could be talked about with this, but I guess I'll just leave it on this. Whereas the film in general is just in such a weird state right now, and television too. But it's just the technology is working itself out right now, and so the content hasn't really been able to fully establish itself because the technology is not completely figured out yet. Are we fully on streaming? Are we doing both in theaters and streaming? Which streaming services are going to win out and be the big guys by the end of this big battle that's kind of going on? But once all of that is sort of worked out, I think that the idea of what it means to have a film showcased in the theater is going to look very different than it does now. And I mean, there's so many different variations of what it could look like, but the biggest draw that I think will bring people into the theater again is not, oh, okay, you get to see this 1 month before people get to see it on streaming. It's going to be, how do we create an experience out of going to the theater again? Versus it just being like, okay, I'm just going to go sit and practically like rent a chair for, $20 or whatever for 2 hours, which is kind of what it feels like. It feels very impersonal. It's not exciting to go, at least for me, I'm talking about myself, but for most people, I don't think it feels exciting to go to the theater. It used to be like, okay, I mean, we're talking a long time ago, but like you got dressed up, there was an intermission. It was an experience that was treated almost like a regular live show, but just it wasn't live. And I think somehow, and for brevity, I won't go into all of the different ideas that I have, but I think in different ways, there are different ways that we can sort of capture that experience quality to going to see a film, rather than it just being, I'm just watching.
Yeah.
So it becomes something you're involved in.
I love that. Very cool. I love it. Yeah, we could chat about this for a long time,
know.
I think. Yeah, it's so good. But let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
The fact that I'm not a good dancer.
Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
From my sister. It was from my sister, Audrey. She's a news producer. She completely changed the way that I think about writing and about how to present my work from a communications perspective. And I could say, so I'm trying to be short, but
no, you can expand a bit.
And you wouldn't know this by the way that I talk, because I'm very wordy, but my writing used a lot of what I do, even though I'm a choreographer and director, so I'm dealing with dance and film. The vast majority of the stuff that I do all day is writing, because I'm writing, zillions of emails. I'm writing press releases. I'm writing pitch decks. I'm constantly having to write things where I'm communicating my ideas to other people. And when you're communicating that, you obviously need to be persuasive. And the way that I was sort of thinking about writing and communicating before came from academic writing, which is so not the way that you're supposed to write in real life. And I used to think, using all these big fancy words and making these long drawn out sentences meant that I was really good, because it made me look intelligent. But I realized because of how she's worked with me on this, that being short, being really concise and punchy with very specific active language and a language that people actually use regularly is so much more effective than having this sort of pseudo intellectual sort of jarbled language that I used to use.
Yes, love that. Third question. What is something that is working for you right now?
Offloading work to other people.
Like delegating?
Delegating, yeah. So specifically in things that are my absolute weaknesses, like, social media and stuff like that. Like, I understand what my weaknesses are. And finally, I've always been just fighting, trying to do it all myself. And finally releasing some of that control and giving that to other people who are better at it than I am is very, very helpful.
Very good. Yeah. We only have so much energy, right? So
Yeah.
delegate if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth question, what is your best resource, whether that's a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast or piece of technology you found is helping your career right now?
Anything written by Robert Greene, but particularly 48 Laws of Power.
Great. Fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in the industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently, or would you keep it the same?
I would have done so many things differently. I'm going to try to not name I'm going to only get to a few things, but I would not have gone to grad school. I potentially would have not gone to college either. I would not have started my dance company as a nonprofit. I would have kept it for profit. I would have hired a social media manager way earlier. I would have moved to LA sooner. I would have networked more, all of these things. There's way more, but there's always going to be so many things where you're like, but yes, there's a lot of, I should have done that.
Yep. And the last question, what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Comfort is the enemy of growth.
Love that. Can you expand on that a bit?
You definitely need some time for recovery, obviously. So it's not like always being miserable and is good. But if you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, probably should go to a different room. If you feel like you don't have anything that's really pushing you to be better, to learn more, it's time to find something else. Being in a position where you feel pressure is going to be a very, very good thing. The best choreography that I've ever made, the times when I've risen to the occasion have been when I actually had a need to rise to an occasion. It came out of a necessity versus me just hoping that it would happen.
Right. Wonderful. And to wrap up this interview, Caroline, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
So you can find me on Instagram at Caroline_Liviakis. And you can also find me on YouTube. Just search my name, Caroline Liviakis. My website, carolineliviakis.com. In terms of promotion, I have my short film, Boys and Girls, is out on the film festival circuit right now. So I will be announcing what film festivals that'll be in. So if you follow my stuff, you can maybe go see the film in person.
Very cool. And for everyone listening out there, I've put the links to all the different ways to connect with Caroline into the description of this episode so you can easily connect with her. And also, be sure to share this podcast with your fellow entertainers, coaches, teachers, arts and entertainment educators, and anyone you know aspiring to create a career in the entertainment industry. You Booked It is the #1 resource of expertise on how to actually create a successful entertainment career. Case in point, everything Caroline gave us here today. So many amazing golden nuggets throughout the entire episode. If you enjoyed this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Caroline, thank you so much for being here. I've had a blast chatting with you, and we really got into some really great stuff today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, be sure to smash that subscribe button. Also, be sure to join the You Booked It community. Inside, you can connect with your people, build industry relationships, unlock unlimited masterclasses, and access the tools and training you need to create sustainable career momentum. Get your invite link right now. Tap the link in the show notes or head over to youbookeditpodcast.com/invite, and we'll see you there.